Week 3 is here, and while it may seem as if it's going to be a weak slate of action, we have a surprise for you that's going to convince you otherwise. Let's get after it, fan. This is College Kickoff Eve. What's up, everyone? Welcome to week 3 of College Kickoff Eve. This is the Iceman, Matt Freites. That is the coach, Brad Powell. We are ready to roll this week live, in charge, and we have a ringer with us, Tyler Budge of CF Budge. Tyler, welcome back, man. It is great to see that face, and happy college football.
Yeah, happy college football, guys. I mean, if you saw me looking up and to the left a little bit during the beginning there, I was watching Taulia Tagovailoa throw a 65-yard touchdown pass. So you call it College Football Eve, but, you know, they've got a few games going on. It's those Friday night games you got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, there's no way we could be out ahead of that. But I just want to say I do have a friend who's at that game right now. I think the stadium is like half full. They should be out there in force on a Friday for that team right now, and that's sad.
It is sad. The attendance there is vomit worthy, to say the least. Pretty bad.
Wow. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great, fellas. Pumped for another week of college football. And, you know, admittedly, like you said, I think a lot of people going into this weekend are thinking this isn't an impressive slate of games. And then, I mean, Budge, I came across like a TikTok or two of yours that kind of said, suggested otherwise. So I think it's awesome that we have you here with us to kind of show us or explain to us what some of the intrigue is in some of these matchups this weekend.
I'm welcome to bring some context and some reasons why some of these games that appear on the surface to be, oh, that's just it. The game's going to be over, going to be a blowout, and maybe give you a few reasons to expect something else possibly this Saturday.
Yeah, and if there's anybody who can do it, it is you. So, Tyler, every single week we do something that has been admittedly very sad up until this point. We do what is called a college roll call. And we are happy to add you to the list because with you comes 2 new schools. So we now have 4 schools that are representing us. I should let you know there is a follower of ours whose name is Jonah, and he has yet to pick a school. And by the end of this season, we are going to do a recruitment video for him, and he is going to choose the school that he is going to root for from now until the end of time. So we will be sure to have you be a part of that because he's going to have the hats in front of him. It's going to be a whole spectacle, and it's going to be awesome. So happy to have everybody aboard. Anybody who is new to this stream, if you are here representing a school or you are rooting for a school, now is the time, and we'll make sure to include it going forward. So just a little bit of fun that we have at some college teams, I guess, expense.
Yeah, it's nice to see we've added a couple schools to the chalkboard there. Hopefully a few more roll in. Is Jonah here? Is Jonah is he second guessing? Like he was in early on Alabama a couple weeks ago, and now I think, is it this week he's going to the Yukon game?
I can't remember. He said it was either this week or last week he was going to a Yukon game. Yukon team who is now 0-2, and I thought they were going to be a little bit better. I feel like they were in that game again against NC State, and maybe the wheels are just falling off, but it's early.
Budge, what's kind of your early consensus on Yukon at this point in time? I mean, I thought they showed up a little bit against NC State at the beginning of the season. Where do they stand now?
Yeah, I mean, for Yukon, it's interesting. For NC State, bad look to start the season, I think. Have such a close game versus Yukon and then get kind of blasted by Notre Dame in the manner in which they did. Yes, Notre Dame's looked really good so far, but it's not good vibes for Yukon right now. I thought Georgia State -7 was a little on the longer side. I would have expected maybe Georgia State -3 in that game, -4, but Georgia State went out and whooped them. So it just seems that people might have gotten a little bit too drunk on the Him Mora Kool-Aid a little bit too quickly. I'm definitely guilty of that because I was thinking they could make that next step this year, maybe go from 6 wins to 7 wins. Maybe you're looking at 8 if things break the right way. But I think that I may have jumped the gun like everybody else a little bit. Success is not always linear, especially at a program like UConn where you're that dreadful for that long.
I don't know if you jumped the gun much because a lot of informed people I would consider to be informed people were really high, I think, or whatever, relatively high compared to recent history on UConn and what they were going to bring to the table. I mean, I follow like a Notre Dame insiders type message board and stuff. And their main guy on there was talking about it. He's like, hey, don't be fooled. This was leading up to NC State, or a few weeks ago. He goes, don't be fooled if NC State struggles a little bit with UConn, because this UConn team isn't bad, which is kind of what happened. But I don't know if maybe it wasn't maybe NC State's just not as good as we all thought they might be.
Yeah, they've been a little. I'd say the word I would use for NC State would be suspect so far this year. For UConn, certainly the season's not over, and they definitely have a lot of winnable games in front of them. But I really feel like that Georgia State game was one of the ones, and it's the danger of the offseason. It's one of the ones you looked at in those schedule, and you put a green W next to when you're talking about the Huskies win-loss totals. So they're going to have to steal one that maybe people don't think they're going to get. I'm looking at that road game at Boston College potentially. So,
yep, a little bit of tease maybe for a little bit later. So, Tyler, before we get into week 2, just to kind of break down what had happened, in your TikTok world, you are accused a lot of hating on probably at least a good 50 teams throughout national college football. And that's just pretty much through putting your power rankings out there and so forth. So I thought it would be fun if you could give us the top 5 schools that you actually hate and make sure that all of those fan bases know about it.
Yeah, so pretty easy list to make because there's some fan bases that really come at me. It's hard to a degree because of the sheer volume, but I'll tell you what, some fan bases really stick out more than others, as we have a special guest joining, I see, over on Matt's
hold
screen.
on, Tyler. My apologies. Hey, James, can you say hello to Mr. Tyler?
Hi, Mr. Tyler.
How's it going, James?
And can you say hi to, who's the guy in the middle?
Hi, Mr. Coach.
That
Hi,
works
James.
too.
How are you, buddy?
That works too. This is our latest recruit. He is going to be the best long snapper the NFL has ever seen. 20 years in the league at the league minimum, and we will be rich. So that is very, very exciting.
Solid strategy.
I agree. He is off to bed. So can you tell everybody to have a good night?
Have a good night,
All right, buddy.
everybody.
And I will see you in the morning. All right. Make sure to close the door on the way out, okay? Love you, bud. My apologies, Tyler. Our recruit is here. No.
Hey, getting the screen time, loving the time in front of the camera. If he's going to be a long snapper, he's not going to get a lot of that. So
he loves himself some him, so that is not something he shies away from whatsoever. So let's get back to the schools that you just hate with a passion.
yeah, so let's talk about them. So there's some fan bases that are much louder than others, and that's what this is kind of based on. It's almost like the 5 teams I hate the most according to my followers. Coming in at 5, it's going to be the Iowa Hawkeyes. People currently right now think it's outrageous. They're unranked in my top 25. They think it's outrageous that I'm critical of this team. Iowa does probably have the best defense in the country, and this is true. I've acknowledged that. However, the main criticism I got this offseason with Iowa, and the reason I hate them, is because I was saying their offense wasn't going to improve at all. And so the main kickback you get from the Iowa fans who don't like me hating their team is, well, we just added Cade McNamara. He's a playoff quarterback, and the offense is going to be so much better with that. And, the way I kind of look at that is you take a system quarterback in Cade McNamara, you put him into a bad system, and does that equal a good offense? I don't think so. I don't think the ingredients are there. So I hate Iowa, according to my followers, for not having them ranked up to this point, even though I think the Hawkeyes still have a ceiling of like 9 wins because of how good their defense is. But their offense, dreadful offense.
I almost busted out a Hawkeyes hoodie for you tonight because I'm a Hawkeyes wrestling fan. And so, yeah, I almost pulled out the gear for you. I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
Yes, but as somebody who roots for a team with an offensive offense, Iowa's might be more offensive. Like,
yes,
last year, watching a game, I think they scored, 17 points in the first 3 games. And I thought, this should never be on my television set, ever. Tyler may not hate them, but I do not like watching them. Now, that goes for much of the Big Ten, but Iowa just, no.
I have a question. So I should know this, being a co-host of a sports podcast, but I've seen this stuff out there about Brian Ferentz and the 25 points a game quota. Is that like a thing that's actually in writing somewhere?
Yeah, so that's 100% a thing. Basically, because of all the pushback about nepotism and why isn't he fired and all that stuff, Kirk Ferentz put an incentive into his contract, basically to earn a lot of his money through incentives. And one of the biggest incentives was score 25 points per game. They've scored 24 and they have scored 20. So they are under that 25 a game right now. They're going to need a heck of a performance from that system quarterback if they're going to get back to that point total. Yeah. So number 4 is going to be the North Carolina Tar Heels. I considered putting them higher, but honestly, it gets really competitive near the top of this ranking. For North Carolina, I'm not as high on them. And that's the common theme with every team here. I'm not as high on them as the national media is, and that results in accusations of haterism. They have a Swiss cheese defense, and people get blinded by the generational quarterback. They see Drake May, and everything else just fades into the background, and they're like, holy cow. And no one really pays attention to the 44 points they allowed versus App State last week and the double overtime thriller they had to squeak out. They had a really impressive performance against South Carolina defensively, but that's an incredibly inconsistent Gamecocks team, and I think we just saw the bad Gamecocks because it's not Cocktober yet. That's when they break out the big guns.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Did you just coin that? Like, are we trademarking that right now live?
I don't know if I can trademark that. If it hasn't been I've heard it before, but if it hasn't been trademarked, we can do that right now. There's Cocktober, and then last year there was also there was Dorvember, because that was when Vandy won 2 conference games.
Man, I think we're gonna have to do Cocktoberfest here sometime.
You're gonna have to ask. So Matt's uncle is
big Gamecock fan.
UB, like diehard Gamecock fan. So you have to ask him if he's familiar with that nomenclature.
He's got to be. I feel like that's got to be a common thing down there.
Tyler, if you ever want to have a fun time during a college football Saturday, follow my Uncle Barry during a Gamecocks game, and you will have an amazing experience, because they won big, right, this past weekend, I think. Mm-hmm. And you would know it, because for 2 hours it was, why are they doing this? This team stinks and all these different things. And it was like 56-7 was the final or something like that. It's amazing.
It's so funny.
Especially if he's drinking bourbon.
He's the epitome of like kind of what we talked about on Tuesday, right?
Yeah, yes. I didn't mean to call him out when I sent you that text, but I was like, wow, I just actually called him out as this guy. I'm sorry, Uncle Barry. My bad.
So talking about North Carolina, can you imagine if Iowa and North Carolina you could put Iowa's defense with North Carolina's offense and vice versa? You might have the best and worst
team. That's a national title contender. A national title contender, and then an 0-12 team. That's what you get.
A team that Boston College could beat.
Yes, maybe. Wow. If they go plus in the turnover battle, maybe they'll have a shot.
Wow, it's getting a little steamy in here, folks.
Yeah, the list is also getting steamy. We heat up as we get to number 3. It's going to be the Washington Huskies. Very similar vibes to North Carolina's fan base. This also doesn't help that it sometimes slips that I'm an Oregon State fan, and people instantly go to, wow, you just hate Washington because you're an Oregon State fan. And full disclosure, I actually don't like Washington. I dislike them as a team. However, it doesn't affect my analysis. And they're just a team that had an inflated win total last year. They lost to UCLA and Arizona State, 2 not great losses last season. They didn't play Utah or USC. They do this year, and their defense is pretty inconsistent. They remind me a lot of North Carolina because they have a lot of that great offense. But the main things are, he's an Oregon State fan, he hates Washington, and he's a Washington hater, and he doesn't, because I think Washington might be the biggest discrepancy in my rankings right now. I have them at 16th. And the AP poll has them at 8, but I refuse to let the AP poll affect my ranking. So people get really upset about that.
Damn straight. But you're a Pac-12 guy, though. Like, you just like the Pac-12 in general. That seems to me very obvious watching your content.
He's probably more knowledgeable about it, right? I mean,
he didn't do research like we did for our video this past week, but
yeah. But I mean, you live right you're in the middle of. Yeah, you went to school there, like you grew up in that area. You live there now, so like. It's natural that those are the teams that you would know the most. I mean, you know everybody pretty well, but definitely more than the average person. But those teams probably a little more intimately.
Yeah, and I think this is another classic case of if you're the Washington fan base, you're picturing your trajectory as a linear trajectory. People are forgetting Washington in 2021 was a 4-win football team. Last season, they had an incredible 11-win season, and people are just thinking, oh, linear, playoffs, national title this year. I don't think that's going to happen, especially because Kalen DeBoer, I think he's a great head coach, but I don't think he's a lights out head coach that is just going to show up in Seattle and then it's just nothing but 11 and 12 win seasons as they ride off into the sunset. There's just a lot of things that make me a little sussed out about Washington, but it's good to know that, that's all biased. I hate them.
Exactly. I agree.
There's a lot of people, man, that are high on them too, because like I mentioned that Notre Dame message board I follow, the guy releases his own top 25 every week, and he had him like in the top 4, which I was surprised by. I mean, and to be fair, like he had Notre Dame at like 8 or 9, so it's not like he was inflating. I feel like he's pretty objective about it for the most part, but he's super high on Washington.
I mean, this is what I'll admit about Washington. I think there's a scenario out there where the Huskies bounce a ball, get the right plays at the right time, recover some key fumbles, force some turnovers, and could have that kind of a season. They're certainly a contender to punch their ticket. But when I'm looking at who I'm going to trust the most in the Pac-12, I trust USC more than Washington. I trust Utah more than Washington. I trust Oregon more than Washington. And after seeing DJ Uiagalelei ball out for a few weeks, I trust Oregon State more than Washington. That's a team that lost by 3 in Seattle on a Friday night last year to Washington. And they didn't have DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. So I just think the difference, especially because Oregon State's secondary, oh my goodness, it looks so good this year.
Yes, not biased at all. Number 2.
Yeah, not biased at all. No bias here. Number 2 is going to be the Boston College Eagles. And this might be a surprise that they did not top the list. But this is because they've quieted down so much, because in the offseason, this is one of those teams I looked at and I said, they suck. They suck really bad. It was them and Virginia, who's losing right now 21-14 to Maryland. Them and Virginia are 2 of those teams where I said, they're going to suck. They're going to suck this year. And they did suck, and they do suck. And so the initial pushback was ferocious. The passionate Boston fans, you are just a hater. You're not ready for this. And they go out and they lose to NIU week 1, and then they need a thrilling last couple-minute victory to beat Holy Cross. So I hate them. That's
So, Tyler, can I ask you, what exactly is it that they think you weren't ready for? Like, were they going to stand outside of your home with pitchforks and torches and stuff?
But the funniest part of it all is the fact that most of their defense, I think my main claim was just they're not going to make a bowl game. It's not going to happen. And the main defense from Boston College fans wasn't, look at our O-line or look at our playmakers or look at our coaching. The main argument was, look at how bad our schedule is. We're bound to find 6 wins in there. And so I was just like, that's a bad sign. If your main defense is just, the other teams we play are so awful, we might win 6 games.
That doesn't make you good.
No, it doesn't.
It's just like the Falcons aren't necessarily good, even though they're going to win the NFC South because the rest of the division is trash. But anyway, that's a side note.
You mentioned the Maryland game, so we can have some fun with this throughout the rest of the show. I only placed one bet tonight, and that was I took the over in the Maryland-Virginia game, like over 48.5. So we'll have to follow that. Yeah, it's looking okay right now. So we'll have to keep tabs on it as we progress.
Yeah, one of my locks of the week was Maryland minus 14. Virginia got off to a strong start there, but it's looking a little better now. Maryland scored 21 unanswered, but Talia just got sacked for 20 yards as I say that. But we'll keep a close eye on that one for sure.
Hey, Tyler, how much of Virginia's struggles have to do with how last season ended, or was it kind of going to be headed in that direction anyway?
I think it was headed in that direction either way. Obviously, that is so horrific and tragic and doesn't help a program at all. But you've seen it before where programs will rally around something like that happening. You look at the Utah Utes. That's been an insane thing. I mean, every time they've done any sort of tribute for those 2 guys who went down for the Utes, they won. They pulled. That's when they beat USC. They wore those ones. I believe. I'm trying to remember their names, but I don't want to push it. It was Trey Lowe and Ty Jordan, I think, were the names of the 2 guys.
I remember that.
But I've been present for 3 moments of loudness now for those guys. It is one of the coolest things in sports. It is so awesome. They did it at the Pac-12 title game last year, and it was electric. And then they went out. They were down when they did the moment of loudness. Then they went out and shellacked Utah or USC for the rest of the game. So I've seen teams rally around tragic stuff like that happening, and I think that trying to quantify that into an on-field performance thing, I'd say more often it motivates teams more than it hurts them. And for Virginia, that's super tragic. But I think from a ball standpoint, they were already headed in that direction. Tony Elliott wasn't looking like a good fit as their coach.
All right, that's fair. I just didn't know because I know that last season ended so poorly for many reasons.
Yeah, I mean, they had to cancel their last 2 games. It's brutal.
Yeah, that's why Virginia Tech didn't have a 9th loss on their schedule last year. So that was kind of a Silver lining. Okay, so BC, obviously they're coming for your door. So this has been, I just want to recap here. So we have Iowa, UNC, Washington, and BC. So Tyler,
Yes.
what everybody has been waiting for, I have fanfare waiting for this. What is the number one team that your commenters think that you hate?
The number one team, and to be frank, this is not even close. Like, this is a wide margin, and that's surprising because Boston College came at me pretty hard. But the Michigan Wolverines, Michigan fans suck. They suck. They are the worst. They are outraged when I rank them third in the country. They're outraged when Corum isn't the number one running back in the country. They're outraged when you say J.J. McCarthy isn't top 3 or top 5. Anything you say about Michigan ever, oh, you're just a hater. I think I made a video where I made fun of the Wolverines when they did that tribute for Harbaugh for a self-imposed suspension,
So
and I got
weird.
called a Michigan hater for that. So I'm a Hall of Fame Michigan hater, according to the comments.
Can we all agree, though, that like Harbaugh even taking any type of a suspension for essentially buying hamburgers is like the NCAA trying to just say, like, we need something because we have nothing anymore.
Oh, for sure. But like, definitely totally weird tribute. Like, I'm on board with that 1,000%. And but did you guys see like the picture of, I like Jim Harbaugh. I like his quirkiness, frankly. And did you see the picture of him like working on the chain crew at like his son's like youth football game or whatever? No, he's out there like polo, khakis, like holding the freaking down marker and stuff. I mean, and I guarantee you, like, it wasn't, some people do that stuff for the pictures to be put online. I guarantee you he did it the whole game. Like, and he was out there and like took it very seriously and all that stuff, which I thought was hilarious.
Who's saying no, though? Like, if he says this is a first down, nobody's questioning him. Right?
True that, unless they're a Buckeye fan, then they're
Hey,
Yeah, then
throwing
you're in
hands.
trouble.
well, that's a pretty
Yeah,
solid list, my man. I didn't realize Michigan was so up there.
Do you
And
think it's
honestly, Michigan has the corniest player in all of college football, in J.J. McCarthy. The corniest player by far. If you watch his interview from their last game after the game, he's talking about not having Harbaugh there, and he's like on the verge of tears talking about like, it just missed him in the locker room, and he was such a good. J.J. McCarthy also, the last 2 playoff exits they've had, he did the Stephon Diggs, like, stand and watch confetti thing. The first year, all right, have your moment when they lost to Georgia, but they lost in the exact same round the next year, and he did it again. And I'm just like, okay, that's corny. You're doing that for the camera, man.
Diggs did the same thing. He did it twice.
Yeah.
True,
So-
that's right. I think that was corny as well.
All right, there you go, man. This is really good. I did not realize we were going to get the real Tyler Budge. Like, this is very exciting, and I am here for this. I'm so going to clip all of these teams and just spam them to all of these fan bases so that we get absolutely lit up, and therefore we are friends here. So week 2, man, was good stuff, I think. I mean, compared to what we're looking at for week 3, I know you're going to educate us here, but obviously Texas-Alabama is the game everybody was talking about. We talked a little bit offline about the performance of Quinn Ewers, and obviously there's a lot of turmoil at Alabama. So I think that it's fair to say that Texas is for real. I know that it's only 2 games in, but that's a really impressive win. And they haven't really, as a program, been winning those games over the last decade or so. And for the first time in a very long time, Alabama feels like they are transitioning to a period, and I don't want to say mediocrity necessarily, but certainly out of the prime days of Nick Saban. And so it's interesting to watch this, but what are your thoughts on how that game went and what does it hold for the future?
Yeah, that game was freaking awesome. And it's really unfortunate. It's not unfortunate. I mean, I'm totally blessed. I was able to go to the Texas Tech Oregon game, which that was a classic, and we'll touch on that in a second. So I didn't get to watch the Texas Alabama game fully live. I watched a couple drives here and there, during timeout breaks when I got connection, the good old phone viewing of the game. That game was an absolute statement by Texas. It has been a long time since we have seen somebody march into Tuscaloosa like that and just absolutely suck the life out of a stadium. Even when Bama stormed back and I think they took a lead late, and it just didn't feel like Texas was ever out of control. And I don't like watching the condensed footage. I like going full game so I can see the aftermath of each touchdown and then trying to skip through. And it just felt like there was still a nervous energy, and then Texas gets the ball right back, punches it in, and they just didn't look back. It was just emphatic, and it's the type of thing Bama usually does to teams on the road. Really impressive. I don't like saying Texas is back. Texas is back because that's implying that we're witnessing the start of a dynasty. But I like to say Texas is here. They are here right now. And this year they can do something really special, especially because college football is looking pretty wide open.
So I would feel differently about this game than I do if it happened in Austin. And especially if, or even like this game, if Texas would have come out and like led the whole game, and won, I would have felt differently than I do, because they came out, they started fast, which isn't uncommon. Like, you see teams that are going on the road in a tough environment, they come out, they start fast because they're all juiced up, and then ultimately it's like the true favorite kind of, the cream rises to the top eventually. But like you mentioned, they came out, took the lead. Alabama came roaring back and took the lead. And that's the time where it's like, all right, like, what are they made of? And I think Texas showed that fortitude that everyone's been waiting to see. And they came back with like authority, man. Like, they slammed the door and put them away, which was, it was a statement. It's not like they snuck by or whatever. I mean, it was a statement win, and definitely a win you could sort of carry over into the rest of the season, a springboard, to use all those cliche terms. I thought it was really impressive.
Yeah, 100%. The most impressive win of the year so far, and could be the most impressive win of the year when we look back at it as well.
Yeah. And what does it mean for Alabama, though? Like, is this just sort of one of those, they lose a game like this every year, right? And I think, Nick Saban's the coach. I mean, they still have a lot of talent on the team, but I hear a lot of people talking about how this doesn't feel like the Alabama of old, and they seem to almost be embarrassed in a way in their home stadium. And there's some turmoil, obviously, as they're making a change in quarterback.
Yeah, it's all about the standard you're holding them up against. If you're holding this Alabama team up against classic Alabama standards, this is not like any Bama team we've seen in the last decade. This is a team that can legitimately lose 3-4 games, if you want to get crazy, on their schedule this year. And it's a team that has a bunch of issues that Bama teams normally haven't had and recently haven't had. And just some serious concerns. But that's going by Bama standards. You want to go by any traditional standard, Alabama is going to be favored in every single football game they play for the rest of the regular season. And so if you talk about like panicking, and some people are going to get confused holding this Bama team up against old Bama team standards, and they're going to start circling games as losses on the schedule. And guess what? Bama is most likely still going to win double-digit games this year. They're still going to be in playoff contention probably by the time we get to November. And there is a scenario where they not get knocked out and they lose some of those close games. But I think the reality of it is you're just talking about what standard you're holding them to. Is it an Alabama standard, or is it just a general standard? If it's a general standard, they're still very much, I'd say, alive.
So I have a question, and this might spin us off topic for a minute, but I feel like it's relevant to this situation specifically. Do you feel like NIL and the transfer portal has sort of like leveled the playing field a little bit? Like that it's almost, maybe it's taken away whatever advantage like the Alabamas of the world may have had at one point in time?
I absolutely think so. I think that the NIL and the transfer portal have 100% balanced things out. And the one measuring tool you need to see that is just look at recruiting. All of the Florida schools, Florida State, Miami, UCF, they are recruiting higher than they have recruited all at the same time. At the same time right now, they're actually getting guys in the state of Florida. Look at the California schools, USC, UCLA, they're recruiting well. And what this is doing right now is Alabama and Georgia, who all this time were able to just march into these states and just poach these guys based on their reputation, they're not able to do that anymore. And the same thing's happening with Texas. Texas obviously getting that win, where they're just not letting their guys, they're getting their guys back home. And a lot of that has to do with NIL. A lot of that has to do with the transfer portal. And I just really think it's done a lot for the balance of the sport. And we're seeing that this year. Right now, I don't think people have quite realized it yet. And that's because Georgia hasn't lost, and that's because Michigan hasn't lost. But one of those two teams goes down, or God forbid, both of those teams take a loss, I think people are going to start to open up their eyes to who's the favorite here? Who's going to win it all? And I really love seeing these teams like Florida State and Texas emerge. It's really exciting.
And obviously Clemson.
Yeah. The Clemson, what I will say is Clemson is not this is not the team I picked to win the national title. That was out there on that field versus Duke. think Brad texted me around halftime. Was like, "How are we feeling about this? Is upset alert?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "We're fine. We're
That's
fine."
what I
you were
want to
pretty
hear. I
confident.
want that kind of confidence. Like, you need it. You got to have it.
No, yeah.
It
And
sort of plays
obviously-
into what we were just talking about, though, because like Dabo hasn't really played the transfer portal game like everybody else has. You know
True.
what I mean? Like, and maybe this is the result of that, right?
You want to talk about the biggest winner of the season so far? It has been the transfer portal. Florida State's entire roster is basically transfer portal players. They weren't all this offseason, but it's ones they've assembled over time. They're just now starting to recruit at an elite level, which is awesome on top of their portal additions, but they get that win over LSU. Texas State, big transfer portal team. They win that game against Baylor, comes out of nowhere. Charlotte, transfer portal team. They got out to a quick start versus Maryland like last week, surprising people. They ended up losing, but I think they could win some surprising games this year. Colorado is the elephant in the room. Transfer portal team. They've shellacked some teams. They were 20-point underdogs against TCU. I just think the transfer portal has really changed the way you have to build a roster, and it's putting a lot of pressure on guys. And I think we have something about Matt Rule later on. I'm excited to talk about that because I have 2 cents on that guy.
This is great. So let's move to Oregon, Texas Tech. Now, I don't. When I mentioned Clemson, I was just doing that to be funny. But you did make a pick when you were on our show last time, and it was at the beginning of August, and I believe it was Oregon, Texas Tech, because you were going to be at this game. And I will admit, man, knowing you were at the game, I tuned in to some Pac-12 football, and it was, I mean, as far as being at the game, it was exciting as hell. The way that game ended, it was kind of a crazy game. But unfortunately, you did come out on the losing end because you had Texas Tech for the upset, and they were right there.
It's true. I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest with you, you mentioned Clemson, and I happily field all Clemson questions because I like to give the same sort of light to when I'm wrong as to when I'm right. The reason I feel more sad about the way things have panned out for Texas Tech than with Clemson is because this Texas Tech team is essentially the exact Texas Tech team I thought we were going to get this year, and yet they're 0-2. They go on the road at night against the Mountain West team. Knew the game was going to be sus. Craig Bull has a great squad there. He won, I think, 3 national titles at North Dakota State as a coach, and they beat him in double overtime. Texas Tech has the Ducks on the ropes, down by 9, fourth quarter. Bo Nix and the Ducks come through. Their defensive line makes a few key plays, an elite defensive line, and they win that game. So that's what makes me really sad about Texas Tech. With Clemson, it's just like, oh, I wasn't even close. This isn't even close to the team that I thought they were going to be. So I don't even feel that bad about that one. With Texas Tech, I go, this is exactly the team I thought we were getting, and they're 0-2. So it hurts my heart a little bit.
How the hell is Bo Nix still playing in college football?
You got your COVID year, you got your red shirt, you got your probably an injury red shirt in there somewhere. I don't know.
I feel like he's been playing longer than Stetson Bennett was at Georgia. Like, I just feel like he has been in college football forever, because I thought that last year was like his 1 year with Oregon. You know, he transfers as a graduate, whatever, and he's there. But it was an exciting game. But it kind of highlights, man, the Pac-12 in their last year has decided, look, we're getting broken up with. We're going to go to the gym and get swole and make everybody miss make everybody know what they're missing. And I'm actually here for it. I think the Pac-12 is super strong.
8 teams in the top 25 in the AP poll. That is, I literally cannot remember the last time that happened. I think the last time that happened was nearly pre-playoff era. It was when we had like 6 of the 7 teams in the SEC West ranked, and then like Florida, Georgia, or something like that.
It has been crazy, but I think the biggest surprise has got to be Colorado. I mean, I, like you, at the beginning thought people are getting swallowed by this hype that this Colorado team is somehow going to be a national contender. And I was very adamant that they were going to get steamrolled at TCU, because I'm like, all right, you know what? It's realistic to think that they don't have enough talent. They haven't played together at all. And here comes a TCU team, lost a lot, but this is a program that has some steady, they're steady. And Colorado has exceeded everybody's expectations, like by far and away, I would think. And it's kind of a fun story, even if it's going to swallow in college football right now.
Yeah, it is a really fun story. Colorado, I mean, got to respect them. 2-0, 2 wins over Power 5 teams. The issue is whenever you have a story that is this big and this widespreading and this mainstream as it's become, you're going to get a lot of opinions on the subject. And the only ones that are going to stand out are going to be the opinions on either side of the spectrum. So you're hearing a lot of stupid opinions right now. You're hearing people saying, "Oh, Deion sucks. He's a punk. They're going to go 2-10. These were flukes. All that. Colorado sucks." And then you're hearing national title, playoff contenders. They're going to crush USC. They're going to crush Oregon. When in reality, it's somewhere in the middle. They've looked better than I thought they would. I think they're probably a 6 or 7 win team, maybe 8 if they can knock off one of those key contenders this year. For Colorado, I'm not focused on those games against Oregon and USC and even Oregon State. I'm focused on those games against Arizona and Washington State and UCLA a little bit. How legit is this Colorado team in year one? Because if they can beat the Arizonas and the Washington States, that tells me Deion has this program ahead of these other programs that took like 3 to 4 years to get to this point. Those are the ones I'm really keying in on, because if they are beating those Arizona teams and beating those Washington State teams in like kind of the middling tier of the Pac-12, it means, yeah, by year 2, you can be expecting that type of a leap into the top tier. But the top tier is, I think, too tough for the Buffaloes, and they're going to get probably humbled after this Colorado State beatdown they're about to give out.
Yeah, so I definitely think it's been fascinating, right? And like Matt said, I was on board, week 1 that they were gonna be brought back down to earth and reality would set in. And obviously they've held serve to this point, which is impressive. But something kind of occurred to me today, and I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. Have we seen anything like this, like what's happening in Colorado right now, as far as like the way they're doing things? Like anything is shocking or against the grain since like the birth of the U. You know what I mean? It feels like there are some parallels there a little bit.
I think that's an excellent comparison, actually, because, I mean, people thought Lincoln Riley was insane for the way he built USC. And this Colorado thing is like, the atom bomb to the stick of dynamite that USC was, basically, with what Deion's done.
But it's also a perfect storm of so many things, too. And I think that's why I was trying to be reasonable. Tyler, when I said that they were going to lose to TCU, I still think, looking back, like, people are playing the result now, but it was a reasonable take, reasonable analysis to think that a team with so much turnover, with 1 win last season, everything is brand new, that there are going to be some growing pains. What impressed me the most about the first week was 6 penalties. That's it. That's not usually what you see from a team that is practically brand new outside of 3 guys. And the efficiency at which they did things, especially on offense, was kind of mind-blowing. Now, I think that their defense has a major issue ahead of them. And
oh yeah,
Nebraska was a perfect opponent for game 2. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to be fully disclosure here. You talk about fan bases that your fans think you hate. I actually do hate Nebraska. So I will be very out there about this. And Coach said, oh, well, people will say that college football is more interesting when Nebraska is good. And it triggered me. Because I'm like, Matt Rule is fine, right? He's a fine coach. But Nebraska is never going to be relevant again. And Matt Rule now is looking at an 0-2 team that looks awful, like just awful.
Yeah, so for Matt Rule and Nebraska, that's just a really interesting case study. Going into the season, or well in the offseason, you look at what Matt Rule has done in year 1 at Temple and at Baylor, 2-10, 1-11. You say, okay, in year 1, you shouldn't expect a win or wins at Nebraska, because Matt Rule in year 1 has traditionally not been able to do that. But then you look into sort of the transfer portal and all that, and you wonder, oh, can he use the transfer portal to maybe flip this roster? I think they brought in like 20 some odd guys through the portal. And so at that point, I started to lean towards maybe they can flirt with / make a bowl game. And I just have been really surprised with what I've seen from Nebraska so far. Offensively, they look dreadful. And you hate to overreact soon, because I honestly think this Nebraska team can go 3-9 this year and be right on schedule for what we thought Matt Rule could do there. However, part of me, deep in my core, and I made a video on this earlier this week, gets a little nervous, just a little nervous for Nebraska football. And for you, Matt, that'd be a little excited that maybe Matt Rule can't adjust to this modern era. And a key comparison, I think, or a similar situation is Tom Allen at Indiana. think of 2019, 2020, pre-transfer portal, pre-NIL. He was a very hot name in the coaching stuff. He got like a 7-year extension. Since then, he hasn't won more than 2 games in conference, and that's because he hasn't been able to adapt to the modern landscape. This is the first time we're seeing Matt Rule in the modern landscape. Yes, it's year 1, and yes, you can point to his previous stints where it took him a while to build, but I'm concerned. Can he build in this era?
Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Coach said he was excited about Matt Rule, and I was like, you might be the only person who's ever said that.
I like Matt Rule more than I liked Scott Frost going in there for
please.
sure. But I think that it's similar to like if you are in the Midwest or the Northern Midwest, if it's just harder to recruit kids to that part of the country, man. Let's be honest. And especially if Nebraska was a once great, proud program, and they've fallen from grace. And unless they can rebound really quick, I just think they're going to kind of be left in the dust moving forward. And the same would happen. I mean, frankly, the same would happen to Notre Dame. If Notre Dame fell to the level of mediocrity that Nebraska fell to over the last decade or two, like they'd be in the same position, honest, just because I think geographically that is relevant. Kids want to play somewhere that you're competing for championships. All right. And they're not going to go somewhere, let's be honest, who the hell wants to go to South Bend, Indiana? But hey, if you have the caveat of we're going to go there and compete for a national championship, that changes things, right? That changes the calculus a little bit, where Lincoln, Nebraska, not only do you get to live in luxurious Lincoln, Nebraska, but also like right now you're so far away from being nationally relevant at all. It's a hard sell, man. Like, and if he ends up resurrecting Nebraska, it'll be one of the most impressive coaching jobs that's ever been done. There's no doubt about that.
But like when you take a job like that, this is the new landscape. So like Matt Rule can't afford to not adapt to the times, right? Like, can any coach take a job now and be like, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way? It doesn't work that way anymore. And now he's being held to the Deion standard, which I realize is a little ridiculous. But my point is like, here's a guy that they're saying, look what he did. And Matt Rule's like, I thought I was on schedule.
Exactly. And I think the thing is, Rule is trying to adapt, right? He went into the portal and he tried, and they implemented a bunch of NIL stuff, and they're trying to build that infrastructure. But the thing that I think we're learning is not every coach can do it. Not every coach can have the allure that a Lincoln Riley or a Deion Sanders or Brian Kelly actually did do pretty well in the portal. But let's go with Norvell because that's the one that's worked. Not a Biff Poggi at Charlotte. I don't know if you've seen an interview of his yet. Go watch his. Those are super entertaining. He's the Charlotte 49ers head coach. Not everyone is built to build their roster in that manner. It takes a new brand of coach, and that is, I just think, the next generation. These GJ Keen, I think, is the Texas State head coach, another young guy that has a big allure. You just need those types of guys if you're going to build your roster like that. And I think we're going to start to see sort of the old genre of coach start to fade away. And I think we just are going to learn with Matt Rule. Is he capable of adjusting and becoming that new brand of coach almost?
That's fair. Hey, let's move on to our respective teams, shall we? Because I don't think we need to belabor the rankings anymore. Obviously, you hate every team in the top 25. So Oregon State, though, right, has been a team that's sort of left out right now of all this Pac-12 talk, but a very impressive start to the season. I think you were at their first game at San Jose State. DJ looking good, something that Dabo could not get out of him, slinging dimes all over the field. And they have San Diego State coming up this week, 24.5-point favorite. I have to assume you feel good about the team this week, but how do you feel about them in the national spotlight? Because I think they're hovering around 15 or 16.
Yeah, I feel pretty dang good about Oregon State football right now. Going into the season, my main concern about the Beavs was we lost 3 guys in the secondary to the NFL, whether that was the draft or they're getting signed. They all graduated either way. So 3 key guys from the secondary. My concern is our secondary going to be a weak point? And if it is, can the pass rush be better? Because that was our biggest weakness last year, aside from not having a quarterback. The secondary looks just as good. Shout out Katano Ladapo, who I actually played against in high school. They beat us like 63-3. He played at Central Catholic. I played at Gresham.
Whoa. Pick that up. Wow. Pick that up off the floor. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Nice job. Nice work.
At Pac-12 Media Day, we made that realization. I was like, "Where'd you play?" He was like, "Central Catholic." I was like, "Dude, we literally played in high school. You definitely don't remember. You probably stiff-armed me on the way to a touchdown." But pretty cool little tidbit there. He was an all conference guy preseason, first team all conference this year. But the pass rush has gotten better. DJ actually looks legit, like actually good, and it's a big deal that he looks good against bad teams, because last year he was looking bad against bad teams at many points this season. So people are going, "Oh, it was just San Jose State, it was just UC Davis." It's a big deal that he looks that good right now, and that if he can play that good, it just gives this Oregon State team a whole nother dimension. So it's the best I've ever felt about an Oregon State team in my life. I'm not used to this. We went through the whole Gary Anderson era. I never thought we would see a day like this. I think we'll cover that 24.5.
And what's the difference between DJ now and at Clemson? Because obviously at Clemson, they had a culture of winning, and now he's transferred and he looks like a completely different guy. Is it an indictment on Dabo and his culture, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. I wouldn't necessarily say an indictment on culture, because I think Dabo actually did a really good job of not putting the blame on DJ ever. And he actually tried to stick it out with DJ for a while, but it just seems like their offensive system is kind of cooked, and they don't have a lot of playmakers. And not even Garrett Riley has been able to make their offense look like it has much life. At the second they got into the red zone, they looked lost every time against Duke. But I mean, I just think Uiagalelei is a lot more comfortable, and he's in a system with playmakers. He's got two all-American returnmen at receiver. Those are fast, shifty guys that he just has to get the ball into the flats. That's Silas Bolden and Anthony Gould. They're ballers. And then he's got a stable of running backs, and not to mention the best offensive line in the Pac-12. Not going to go as far as to say country, but if you saw that play against San Jose State where he could have made a sandwich in the pocket. He had all the time in the world back there. So I just think he's really comfortable with the Beavs, and it'll be interesting to see them in that week 4 trip to Pullman.
It couldn't have been helpful either at Clemson that he had, you had Cade Klubnik sitting there, and I'm sure that there was, rumblings going on that he should be starting, and just sort of the pressure that brings, it's got to be a little unsettling. And you would hope that, hey, being a big time athlete, you're just going to deal with that and you should be able to handle it. But let's be honest, we're all human. And if you were sitting there with somebody kind of breathing down your neck every day to take your job, and there were people that were in support of that fact, it would probably only make it worse.
And then look at the quarterbacks he followed, though.
Yeah, that's also true. The expectation. There was also a storyline that not a lot of people know, and you don't want to read too much into it, but he was dealing with like a deeply personal issue at Clemson that not a lot of people knew about, and he's no longer dealing with that issue. So that he could be more focused.
I definitely agree with that. All right, Coach. So Notre Dame has one of the directional Michigans this week, a 34.5 point favorite. I'm assuming you are shaking in your boots.
I mean, this is a tough week, and I hope that Notre Dame, the players at Notre Dame, are where I'm at with this, because I'm just let's get through this week and on the next week with Ohio State, right? Because we're everyone, I think, is the country almost is waiting to see is Notre Dame legit, right? And we're not going to find that out until next Saturday. Or I mean, if they lose tomorrow, obviously that would be a clear indicator that they are not legit. But I hope I have all the confidence in the world that Marcus Freeman has the team focused on the task at hand tomorrow. I'm not worried about that. Fans can worry about Ohio State. But I think coming into this game, I feel good about it. I'm more so looking to see them come out, and I'm kind of approaching it from a coach's perspective. Is I want to see them come out and improve on some things from last week. And what we saw last week against NC State was they struggled a little bit early offensively to move the ball. But what people, and this could apply to Texas, this could apply to anyone, because there were Notre Dame fans losing their minds. They went 3-and-out the first 2 series. And of course, hey, was I getting a little nervous? Me and my dad are watching. I'm like, oh boy, this might be a grind. And, but you have to give credit to the other team as well, right? Because they're trying their hardest too, right? And they have good coaches. And we talked about it leading up to that game on this show last week, that NC State probably has, if you're going to look on both sides of the ball, collectively, they have very good coordinators. They probably have B to B plus coordinators on both sides of the football, which is, you don't see that so much. You might have a really great offensive coordinator, mediocre defense, or vice versa. they've got two really strong coordinators that had great game plans. But the testament to Notre Dame was that they adjusted and they weathered the storm. And then ultimately in the end, as they wore them down, they did what they were supposed to do. And Notre Dame also, they will never have the privilege of a team overlooking them. You know what I mean? Like everyone's going to get Notre Dame's going to get everyone's best shot. And they're not the only team like that. Like USC, Alabama. I mean, there's probably, 5 to 10 teams out there in the country that would fall into that same category. So I'm not acting like they're unique in that sense. But going into this week, I just look for them to take care of business, really. And, just continue building on what they've done so far this season. I don't expect anything significant. It's kind of, like I said, man, like to me, it's like, all right, let's just get through it and move on. And I know that's a dangerous way to think about it, but I don't have a ton of thoughts. I know that, Central Michigan, like so far to this point in time, they've been impressive on the offensive side of the football. And so I do think that could present some challenges. Every other team's kind of come out early on offense and given Notre Dame some problems, and they've been able to adjust. And so it'll be interesting to see if that's kind of what happens again and how quickly, if Notre Dame's able to adapt and make the necessary adjustments to kind of lock things down pretty quick before, the team's able to get themselves in the ball game.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns for Notre Dame in this game. Though the one notable thing that is in this game is Central Michigan is the current holder of the reverse MacGuffin. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. I know Washington holds the MacGuffin, and nobody's been talking about it, which has been very disappointing to me, but the reverse MacGuffin. So that'll be interesting. I'm sure Brad will be watching with bated breath, wondering how that's going to go.
On the edge of my seat.
At the edge of your seat. Speaking of games that'll have everybody on the edge of their seat, Virginia Tech traveling to Rutgers. And this is a sign for me. I can't decide. Tyler, you can be the decider on this. Is the 7-point spread in favor of Rutgers more of an indictment on Virginia Tech, or should we be giving Rutgers credit for having done something and built a program that at least has a lot more credibility than they have had in quite a while?
I don't know, man. I don't. One of my locks of the week is Virginia Tech +7. I don't know why they're giving Rutgers 7 points here. It feels disrespectful to the Hokies, in my opinion. I actually like Virginia Tech to cover in this game, and I know you don't like to hear that, but I actually do. I think it's kind of disrespectful to Virginia Tech, but I've been a little higher on them than everybody else this season.
I was surprised too, but the reason I'm giving you that look is because somebody in the middle of this feed took Virginia Tech to cover last week, and I told him not to because I said, I don't know. And there we go. He lost a parlay 2 times because of me, but that's another story. I
took Virginia Tech to cover last week too.
I'm sorry.
I feel good about it, man. Like,
listen.
Let
me just say
you can't do anything when there's a weather delay that long. It's fluky. You might as well throw everything out the door.
That should favor the home team in most cases, though, because like you're in your home locker room, you probably have and that's what was kind of shocking to me. Which I mean, obviously Notre Dame was the home team and they handled it well and took care of business, but I definitely thought it was a more evenly matched ball game between Virginia Tech and Purdue, and
they hung tough.
I was mistaken.
They hung tough like that. It was a game that I thought was going to get out of hand, but they hung tough. And here's what I'll say about Virginia Tech is their defense, I think, it's not elite, but it's certainly in the top tier in college football. Like having seen them in person now and seen how they have handled themselves, I think that they do have a good defense. And what stinks about that is that their offense is so inconsistent that it's going to the greatness of the defense is not going to shine through because the offense is not going to put up enough points. And I've been really harsh on Grant Wells. He has improved a little bit from last year, and I think overall offensively, they looked like they had some potential. In that Old Dominion game, whenever they opened up the offense and actually threw the ball down the field, Grant Wells started to become actually accurate, and they were actually making chunk plays, which is what you kind of want to see and what you need to see. But they just had a lot of stagnant runs, and I will give them a pass in this Purdue game. But the Rutgers game, I'm a little bit surprised because I was like, is Rutgers actually decent enough to have this kind of a spread at home? Like normally they're a laughingstock, and I get it. Virginia Tech's not what they've been, but Rutgers seems like a team that they can at least match, if not beat. But maybe that's just me overselling what they are. But Brent Pry, to me, seems like he has made strides. At least it seems that way. Talking with people on campus and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not worried that they're going to lose per se, but it's more of a like, I hope that they can come out and match this team because it does feel disrespectful. I was very surprised at such a high spread.
Do you guys remember, and Budge, you may not because you're a little younger than we are, but like, do you remember old Big East Rutgers? Old Big East Rutgers was solid, man. Like there were some battles. Like that's back when like West Virginia was really good with Steve Slayton and that crew and Owen Schmidt, Pat White, those guys when McAfee was there. They had some battles, man, with Rutgers. And I mean, they were nationally ranked. And, this is when West Virginia was like in the top 5 in the country and stuff. And Pitt was, I think, in that equation as well. So like that was some fun football. And they used to play a lot on Thursday nights. Like Big East action on Thursday nights was a common thing. And it was usually good matchups, which was even better.
I remember playing them. The first game I ever saw at Lane Stadium was against Yukon, and Yukon wasn't in the Big East then, but then they ended up coming in. But we saw Rutgers play a lot. We beat them handily a lot, and things have changed now. But I don't know. I think that Rutgers, they look good against Temple, obviously, last week, but I don't know how much that means because Temple doesn't seem like they're a team anybody's really talking about. So I hope that you all are right. I hope the Hokies win and go on to 2-1 because they have a tough game at Marshall coming up. That I know Budge was just like blown away that anybody scheduled that.
I am blown away that people scheduled that. For Virginia Tech, I haven't seen what I wanted to see from their offense to make me feel good about my 7-win prediction on them preseason. Defenses looked just fine. Like you've said, they've looked pretty good. But I'm familiar with the Big East era of football. And Coach, what was the over-under on that Maryland game?
I think it was 48.5.
Okay, it just hit.
Close.
Then.
I just saw it hit.
Oh, good.
It just hit, and Maryland's covering. They're up by 21.
We need like we need like a game break soundbite or something. You know what I mean? Yeah, 48.5. Sweet. Yeah, we just covered. Awesome. That's a winner.
It's 35-14, and on Twitter, somebody asked me how I thought the game would go. I said 42-14 win for Maryland. So we could have an all-timer on Twitter later today.
Great.
That'd be fantastic. I'm looking.
Might be more people watching this feed than actually at the game. Okay, so first thing I want to mention, scrolling at the bottom. So Coach and I are kind of happy that we have a new sponsor in New Era. So if you are in the market for a hat for this weekend or any weekend coming up in the football season, check out newera.com/Iceman and use the code Iceman to get 15% off of your next New Era cap. I'm very excited to buy some new stuff, hopefully over the coming weeks. So just wanted to get that plug in there, help pay some of the bills. You know how that goes. And now we got week 3. So, but Tyler, we kind of felt like maybe there was some weakness this week compared to last week, but we've highlighted some games here that I want to talk about. Let's start with Tennessee and Florida, which obviously is the game that everybody's honing in on. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you have an upset alert for us here.
That means you saw the graphic I put up today, and that is true. I do have an upset alert here, and I have an upset pick here. I think the Florida Gators are going to win this game. I feel great about this pick. I think that this is just a what the hell college football game waiting the wings. People are completely sold against Florida. They have already shipped Billy Napier down the river. They don't care about him. And this Florida team has a lot of talent, and they are a dangerous team. And they recently have owned Tennessee. And I just think that Florida can win this home game. They can win this game with their talent. For Tennessee, their defense was already a big weak point, and their offense looked really suspect against Austin Peay last week. I think Florida can drag Tennessee into the mud to play dirty with them, and I think that game is going to favor the Gators, and I think they're going to win. And this is just a Napier needs it game, and I really think the Gators can get it.
I think there's something to be said for playing with a little bit of like desperation, and there's a few ball clubs around the country that are in this same situation, and it'll be interesting because I'm in that same boat. Like I look at this game on paper, and I'm like, this is a historically intriguing matchup and a historically great matchup. And I saw it, and I'm like, Florida's kind of under. They're not very good this year. Tennessee's still kind of. I do think that Tennessee's playing with house money a little bit in terms of they are still riding on the cred of last year's team. A fair amount, and I'm not trying to discredit this team too much, but when we're early in the season like this, I do think that you're still sort of carrying the reputation of last year's team to some degree, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, 100%.
I was a little bit surprised. Maybe I was drinking the Tennessee Kool-Aid a little bit too hard when we were doing crunch time earlier this week, but Hey, I'll be always happy to be wrong. I mean,
think
I'm
I was
wrong
with
just
you.
about all the time. You were with me. You said
I
they're
think
going
I
to be
was with you.
singing Rocky Top
No,
at the end of this. Is what you said.
I was with you, and I don't want to back off of that, but like
Just back off.
I'm with you. I'll stand strong on the Volunteers, but I'm saying that I get where Budge is coming from. Like I could see
do.
this being that, and like let's be honest, like when you get into the heart of the SEC schedule, traditionally, like throw the records out the window, man. Like it's
Mhm.
just good football, and anything it's almost like not to. It's not hyperbole necessarily, but it's almost like the NFL, right? Week to week, and the margin between team to team is so small that it really comes down to like execution and game plan. And the SEC is very similar in that sense. Maybe I don't. The records aren't really showing that this year, but traditionally, that's the way I would look at it.
And that's fair. And who knows more than we do? Tyler knows more than we do. So there's the plug for you right there. All right, the Backyard Brawl, West Virginia, my least favorite team in all of college football, and Pitt, who I believe that's a fan base that you pissed off, Tyler, in the offseason, did you not?
100% I pissed them off. I have Pitt missing a bowl game this year, and they didn't like to hear that. And then Cincinnati, a team I said was going to make a bowl game this year, went and shellacked them on the road. So that was a pretty rewarding game to watch. The Pitt fans got very quiet after that. It's funny how that happens. But ACC fan bases, man, they just come after me. I'm definitely a Pitt hater, labeled by my followers. But I like West Virginia in this game. I really do.
That makes me sad.
Well, one thing about this rivalry, right? So like I think there are what I'm going to call white collar rivalries and blue collar rivalries, right? And I feel like a lot of Notre Dame's rivalries would be classified as what I would call like white collar rivalries. Like even when I was there last year for the Clemson game, it's not like it was very friendly. Like me and my dad were sitting at an Irish sports bar, like right by campus, and there were people walking by in their Clemson gear, and Notre Dame fans were like turning around, like, "Hey, welcome to South Bend. I hope you have a great time." Like, I mean, they were very inviting and welcoming. Like, I didn't see a single Notre Dame fan say anything derogatory towards a Clemson fan once, not a single time. And I've been to a game in Morgantown, West Virginia, when they played Marshall. Now, this was probably 2006 or something like that, and I was standing outside the stadium because I had a buddy that went to school there, and we were visiting. And yeah, I mean, there were like literally these poor old people, like Marshall fans. I mean, literally senior citizens walking by, and like they were just getting eviscerated by the West Virginia students. And I'm like, this is different, man. Like, and just I know that the rivalry between West Virginia and Pitt is like it's a big deal. Like, I mean, it is a I don't want to say, I don't know if hateful is the word, man, but like I think it's intense, and it's just different than some of these other rivalries. You know what I mean? And it means a lot to those people for multiple reasons. And so I don't know. I think it'd be fun if it's kind of a slugfest and they grind it out. But I do like, I do like West Virginia. Go Mountaineers, right?
There we go.
Makes me sad. Anyway, LSU and Mississippi State, Starkville, Mississippi. I've never been there. I can't imagine that it's like this.
Stark Vegas.
Yeah, maybe. So coach is very high on Brian Kelly and the boys to go down there as what I said is rape, pillage, and plunder in Starkville and take home the W and cover. I think it's a 9-point spread this week. Obviously, LSU took a lot of crap after losing so definitively to Florida State, but I think that much like the rest, there's a long season to go. So I think that Brian Kelly has time, but this seems like a game that LSU may be close early, but should pull away on. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing the same exact thing that happened to LSU last year happen. They lose the opener, and everyone gets really low on them out of nowhere and just forgets Brian Kelly's a great coach, and he's really great at adjusting. And I think Coach is spitting if he's saying LSU's going to take care of business here, because I think they will. I mean, they'll handle and cover against the Bulldogs. Brian Kelly is great at adjusting, right? React like honey. Don't react like water. Don't slosh to one side just because there's a result that happens where, LSU lost to a great Florida State team, therefore they're trash this year. Yes, it's a bit of a trap game, but I think that LSU should take care of business here and cover.
It made him uncomfortable to say that, by the way, because, he's a big Brian Kelly guy.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Like, I mean, I have respect for what he's done as a football coach. I'm on record multiple times saying I think he's kind of a lousy human being, but I'm with Budge on this. I think that LSU they're kind of in statement mode, right? They have to change the narrative a little bit, and you do that by going on the road and winning convincingly, and I expect them to do that this week for sure.
All right. So Minnesota and UNC. PJ Fleck has got to be one of the weirdest dudes in all of college football, and the Swiss cheese defense of UNC. Minnesota could barely put up points against Nebraska at home, so I'm not necessarily thinking that they're going to be able to put up a ton of points against UNC, but this could be a game that could be closer than people think, but I feel like UNC has to win this game, right?
This is an interesting little game, I think. I think we learned a little bit more about the North Carolina defense last week against App State, as I previously alluded to. Maybe they're not as good as they initially looked. I think I am banking on an Ethan Kaliakmanis breakout game. I think Minnesota can score against this North Carolina defense, and Minnesota's defense is pretty dang legit, even though they've got a lot of really young guys in new roles. I think they can limit Drake May, and you got to call your shots when you can. I'm picking the upset.
I love it. What do you think, Coach?
I'm trying to scramble here and find the spread. Do you guys know what the spread is off the top of your head?
I believe it's got to be North Carolina -7.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, -7. So, obviously North Carolina doesn't play defense, and the finals of their football games look similar to a basketball score almost. I don't know, man. I haven't seen a lot out of Minnesota that gives me a ton of faith to even take them to cover, just because of how good North Carolina is offensively. So I don't really want to do it because I have no reason to want to see North Carolina succeed. But I think I'm going to take the heels to cover, man. Because I feel like the sexy pick is to take Minnesota to go in there and keep it close, especially after what we saw last week. And I'm not saying that it's a hot take on your part, because I know your picks and predictions are based in research and knowledge.
Reality.
But based in reality and off things that most fans don't even consider, like myself, which is why I think I'm going to take Mac Brown and the Tar Heels.
Can we also segue to the fact that Army has thrown 17 passes tonight, which is like,
it's got to be a record.
The amount that they threw all last season, that's amazing. They had 37 points. Just fantastic. I find that amazing. I know,
crazy
right?
game.
37-29.
Also, it's a 42-14 in the Maryland-Virginia game, which is, again, the exact score I predicted pregame.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Let's get a lightning delay and just call the game as it is, because obviously it's done with. All right. So, Tyler, I was also looking at your stuff, and you had some things to say about Big Noon Saturday. And of course, again, they're going to be featuring a Colorado game for the third time in a row, because let's just go ahead and hype until they lose a couple games, and then it's not nearly as sexy anymore. College Game Day is going there, and this is the game that people are probably going to be talking about, even though it should be a game that is kind of a wash. I mean, it's a rivalry game, of course, but obviously Dion not taking his sunglasses and hat off to talk to the adults in the room is coming in with a chip on his shoulder. I think that Colorado, this is a game though, like you said, like how do they look against teams like this? And I think if they come out and struggle, maybe we see what the real team looks like, but I'd like to think that they can win this game.
I'd like to expend my energy talking about Big Noon Kickoff, because I'm going to pick Colorado, and I think they're going to blow out Colorado State. But Big Noon Kickoff is an absolute joke of a kickoff show. It's horribly produced. It feels like they are ad-libbing when they're out there. Like in ESPN, there's a very deliberate monologue by Reese Davis that's beautiful and just sends chills down your spine. And they get to the desk and they've got a very clear order of topics. They do several nice profiles. On Big Noon, it's just like they're just going around doing whatever, and Rob Stone is just like, hey, keep that shot, hold that shot for another 30 seconds or whatever. And they always hold it too long. Like the fans are like starting to lose energy. Like, oh, okay. Like, can the red light turn off so I can stop cheering? They don't have a headgear pick. They have nothing to look forward to at the end of the show. Like you said, 3 straight Colorado games. This is nothing new. Last year, 9 of the games they went to throughout the season had either Ohio State or Michigan featured in them. So they're really just really stubborn about going to Fox games and just going to the games that they want, like think will get the highest ratings, which the thing that makes game day so pure is it really feels like they try to go to the best game every week. It makes it awesome. And they go to underrepresented schools, even if it's not going to get as much viewership. They go to an FCS game every year. Big Noon Kickoff is just shamelessly selling out. Mark Ingram is the most unbearable TV personality ever. There's no chemistry up there. You've got the absolute plank of wood of Rob Stone. You've got Mark Ingram just yelling nonsense into the mic. He said I don't even want to describe what Mark Ingram was doing, but you just watch this week and you'll see. And then Urban Meyer's there, and he's just so cringy to watch well, especially knowing his past and all the stuff he's done. It's just a really cringy show and presentation overall. So that's just my 2 cents on Big Noon Kickoff.
Urban Meyer, can we go on a tangent here for a second? Because Coach and I never got to talk about the Swamp Kings documentary. I'm not sure if you actually watched it or not, but
I did. That was one of the worst experiences of my life.
Okay, so 3 people are in
piece.
It was I'm almost on the verge of swearing. Like, I mean, I will cut it up, but I'm just trying not to make Tyler uncomfortable. But I was like so friggin' pissed by the end of that documentary. And I thought, who the F did Urban Meyer pay to have that fluff piece sitting out there when the topics that I want to hear is as long as our damn notes for the show tonight? And also, as a side note, as you started describing Big Noon Saturday, I was seriously considering that you were just using it to talk about us. The way you said it's unproduced and there's no,
No, this is more produced than Big Noon Kickoff in all likelihood.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I do think so Tuesday we talked a little bit about how we thought. I was a little surprised that they picked this game. The game day picked this game slightly. I mean, I think it's a strike while the iron's hot sort of thing, like maybe like Colorado stock may never be higher than it is at this moment because of what lies ahead on the schedule. But like with the alternatives, with the backyard brawl and then the Tennessee-Florida game there, I'm like, man, I'm kind of surprised, or that they didn't take the opportunity to maybe go to an FCS school or something like that this week was a little surprising, I thought.
Yeah, a little bit. There's no love for the backyard brawl this week. That's what's really sad, to be honest.
Yeah,
I agree, man. Like that's. I was talking to my dad like last weekend. I was like, he's like, where do you think game day goes next week? I was like, honestly, man, my pick would be that they go to Morgantown for the backyard brawl. Like, that's what I would expect to happen. And maybe it's because neither of those teams, they both got. They both lost a game or whatever to this point, so it's not like one of the teams is ascending necessarily. West Virginia is sort of in desperation mode. Pitt's probably underachieving based off what expectations were. There's just not a lot of sexiness about the game other than just purely the rivalry. And I understand from a viewership standpoint why they would go to Colorado. I get it. And I'm not shaming them for it. It's just it definitely caught me off guard. I thought they'd end up there eventually for sure. But I mean, wasn't Big Noon Kickoff there last week, right? They were
and we
won
won
last
last
week. 3 straight weeks, man.
Jeez, it just doesn't. It's that's the weirdest part about it. Like you said, like I don't know. I'm with you, man. Definitely strange. So I guess I can't really. This game day is their first time having Colorado at all. So here I am poking holes in their philosophy, but definitely a lot more criticism to be pointed at Big Noon Kickoff.
I mean, is it possible that Big Noon Kickoff is just trying to be the exact opposite of game day on purpose? That they're thinking of, because I would like to think that any reasonable human being could watch game day and think, this is the most polished sports production on television, or at least it's in the top 3. As you said, Tyler, like everything they do is deliberate. And part of the reason we wanted to do a live show before college, game day was like, hey, maybe we can do something that sort of gets people excited about that, but we're never going to be that, right? You can never do what they do because they've been honing that craft for forever. And it's perfect, right? There's nothing that you would really say you would change about it. Maybe a thing here or there, but overall it's great. So maybe that's what they're thinking is like as Fox, and we know that Fox has a lot of interesting things in terms of like its whole, media empire, but it's like maybe they're like, we'll just be that. Like, hey, it's cool that they're, hey, hold the shot there, when these people actually don't know what hold the shot means or like why we should hold the shot and like producing this stuff. So that's the only thing that I'll say is maybe that was what they're thinking.
Maybe it comes across as cringe, in my opinion.
It does, yeah.
I'm here for it.
It's because it's such an effort to. It's again, they're just imposters a little bit, right? Like, I think they should. I don't know what it would be, what the alternative model would be that could have as much success, but like it's like they're almost attempting to just purely replicate it, but just not as good, which I don't think is a recipe for success.
honestly, I think a good start would be not doing one-sided reporting. That's something they do currently. At the game last week, they did not spend a single minute of that broadcast talking about Nebraska football. The entire time it was about Colorado. They had Coach Prime on the show. They brought him out and they were like, Coach Prime, say hi to all the fans that are here. Yeah. And like hyping him up. Mark Ingram screaming into the mic, hyping him up and all that stuff. And it's just like, it's just so one-sided. It's like, come on, give the spotlight to the other team. And I expect the exact same thing this week. The only time you're going to hear about Colorado State this week is they're going to be talking about Jay Norvell's comments about the hat and sunglasses.
Which is stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, they might be a little bit more unbiased, but I think that they understand. College Game Day at the end of it is an entity of ESPN who understands that what makes money is the clicks, and people are going to be watching to hear about Colorado. Like all the casual fans are going to be tuning in for that. So, I mean, I get it from a business perspective, but I think from an entertainment perspective, you'd like them to choose something more pure to college football. And I think, as much as I hate to say it, the Backyard Brawl would be that. But Tyler, are there any other games that we haven't mentioned that you're excited about, that you think that people watching would be excited about, that maybe aren't on our radar?
Yes, I do. So I have,
of course,
Kansas State at Missouri, I think is one that deserves mention. And that's because you've got Kansas State, top 15 team nationally, traveling into an SEC environment. The SEC has not fared well in their non-conference games against Power 5 opponents so far. So I think this one is going to be important for more than just that. Elliot Drinkwitz is on the hot seat. He needs to win this game. They have not looked good against South Dakota. They did not look good against Middle Tennessee. And the spread in this game was as low as 3.5 at one point in Kansas State's favor this week. So I just think it could be a tight little game here and pretty interesting to keep an eye on in that 9 o'clock window Pacific time. But I do think Kansas State's going to win this game, and I think it'll look a little bit like the game last year where they just kind of were way more physical than them and beat them. But I do think it's an intriguing little game to keep an eye on.
No, I'm with you there, man. I think it's definitely going to be an exciting game. And I always forget. I feel like Missouri is like the SEC team that everyone forgets about, right? You always forget they're kind of, because they are sort of in no man's land between the SEC, the Big Ten, and Big 12 country, like just it's very weird. So obviously it's an old Big 12 rivalry for them, which is nice to see. So, no, I mean, I think I like Kansas State. I think Kansas State's going to be pretty solid again this year. And no, I feel good about it. But can we talk about this for a second? The freaking service academies, like Air Force and Army tonight, have combined for, let me do the math here, 76 total points, like between the two of them? Like, when is the last time that happened? Like, that's just wild to me. I mean, and they're playing, they're playing UTSA and Utah State. So not like we're talking about powerhouses by any means, but formidable opponents. And to see that sort of score put up is shocking.
Yeah, those service academies aren't messing around, except for Navy. They are just messing around.
Yes.
But let me ask you something. Why in the 100 and something years that we've been doing this have the service academies not updated to the times? I get that they're recruiting for a different reason, and so therefore the crop of talent that they're pulling from is much different. But like, I would like to think that over the course of time, somebody would have said, hey, let's try something other than the triple option. Like, let's maybe try, and even if they're not very good, like, is it solely based off the fact that they can only get specific players and it's just easier to implement an old school offense to, sort of complement the players that they can get? Or is it some stubbornness? Because it just seems very odd to me that all three of them don't have any even type of updated offense.
All right. So as a former offensive coordinator at the high school level that coordinated a wing T offense, which is similar to a triple option offense, same principles. They run it because there's very black and white, simple rules as far as the blocking scheme goes, and it allows you to. The whole premise of the offense is to outnumber the opponent at the point of attack, and you don't have to necessarily move people. It allows you to be more successful with smaller, quicker linemen. In some instances, they just have to function as a speed bump to some degree. And the belief is it allows you to be competitive with, like you mentioned, a lesser talented, smaller team. And if you can control the clock and just grind people out 3 yards at a time. I mean, that's kind of what it's the whole philosophy is based in. So yes, you can do that. But at the same time, I coached for a guy one time, there was a big, it's funny because at the time it was just called the spread offense, right? When people got in the shotgun and threw it around, oh, what's the spread? Well, now it's like everybody's in the gun and there's just, there's the run and shoot and there's so many variations. But his philosophy about that was the same. He's like, well, we're going to have the ball out so fast that it doesn't matter if our linemen block anybody. Like he used that term speed, but they just have to be a speed bump. Our quarterback's going to get the ball and the ball's out. Just all quick game nonstop. And it's like, in theory, yes, that works, but you got to have a quarterback that can make the read, get it there on time, a receiver that's going to run the proper route, catch the ball. There was again, to bring up another person, there was the AD. I used to be in the press box when this guy was the head coach, and he goes, hey, he's like, you tell Coach Martin that there's only 3 things that can happen when you throw a pass, and 2 of them are bad. Run the damn ball. So I'd always have the privilege of relaying that down in the field.
God.
That's good. Yeah, right on the money with that one. I mean, also tradition's got to factor in a little bit there, and also probably convenience of just keeping the same thing. It probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it probably
just
does.
plug and play. I mean, that's kind of what they're operating
Literally.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to be. I'm trying to ask questions here. Like I'm trying to be educated on.
Get
this
out
stuff.
of here.
What
We
can
don't
I
want to
say?
hear it, Matt. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to. We're not doing any of that research. All right, Tyler, what would be your game of the week if you had to pick one?
It's got to be Washington at Michigan State, man. It's a MacGuffin game. MacGuffin game, and the extra intrigue is Michigan State doesn't have a head coach. They're going to have an interim head coach in this game. Mark D'Antonio could be on the sidelines in some capacity for Michigan State. I'm not sure how up to date I am on that, actually. I don't know if he's going to be coaching or advising or what he's going to be doing, but these teams with interim head coaches, sometimes they play inspired football. But I mean, I expect Washington to smoke these guys, but it is going to be the best team technically that they've played so far talent-wise.
Yeah, this one intrigues me too, because usually you get these West Coast teams traveling to the East Coast. I know it's a little bit less of a thing now, but with all the turmoil at Michigan State, the Mark D'Antonio thing, I was like, that's fascinating. Because it's just interesting that this guy who has this legacy leaves, and then all of a sudden, and he leaves under kind of weird circumstances, and now all this stuff happens with Mel Tucker, and here he comes again, and we're going to have him on the sidelines. He's going to be a part of this, and definitely interesting to me.
Oh, it's super interesting. And it's funny because we talked at the top about teams rallying around different sort of events that happen within their university or program. And I mean, this would be a weird one. Like, this is not the type of event that's going to that's going to inspire
I don't think anyone's inspired around the locker room.
I mean, this is not the type of thing that's going to inspire a team.
They're inspired. I don't want to see them on Saturday.
But that's what it's like. I'm just curious to see how they approach it, and like even how the media like kind of handles it, like how often they like reference what happened and all that stuff. There's just a lot to there's a lot of different things going on with that game.
Well, if it was at Michigan, they'd do some awkward tribute video before the game
Can
started.
You imagine how ugly it would be if they were playing Michigan tomorrow? It would. Oh my gosh!
In more ways than one.
Man.
Yes. Well, Tyler, we're bumping up on the end here. We've been on here for a while, so why don't you let us know what's going on in your world, not just with TikTok, but what you got going on with all the games you're going to go to. You've got this amazing traveling circus. I can't remember what the name is called. You'll have to educate me, but you're trying to go to as many games as possible along the way. So let us know what you got going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to the Fresno State, Arizona State game this week, keeping it local, going to watch my alma mater play, fading my alma mater. One of my locks is Fresno State minus 3.5. So we'll see if the Sun Devils can look good. Hopefully some fans turn up. I saw it was kind of empty for the Oklahoma State game, unfortunately. So we'll see how the fan support is there. The Last Dance tour hit a slight bump in the road. My car of 4.5 years that I had for all of college, Roxanne, her engine gave out about an hour into the drive to Lubbock. And I was informed over the weekend. We ended up having to get a rental, which I had to call and convince the rental place to stay open an hour later so we could show up and get the car to go to Lubbock. which was a crazy fiasco. And basically they told me, yeah, good old Roxanne's never going to drive again. So I sold her this weekend to a junkyard, which said they're going to try and fix her up and sell her to another college kid. So she gets to be a college car for the rest of her life. But went to a great many football games with good old Roxanne. So she was good to me, a good college car. But I already have some arrangements in. I'm getting another car. So Last Dance Tour should be back in business, I'd say around week 5.
By the way, that has to be like when you have to put your dog down and your parents say that they brought it to a farm, right? Where they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we're gonna make it run again, and we're gonna give it away. We're not gonna do anything to it." My condolences. Also, I love a man who names his car because I do the same thing. So very happy to be in that same boat. Coach also had some car problems this week on his way back from recording yesterday. Blew out a tire, so he took.
Yeah, dude, that was wild. Like I couldn't stop because of where I was, like a 2-lane road, like in a wooded area, like, and so the time I realized the tire was gone. And the funny thing is, I just had a flat tire a
Like
couple
2
weeks
weeks
ago,
ago, yeah.
and I have the spare on, and like all these newer vehicles, like you have the
donut.
the sensor though. I'm saying
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's a truck. No, my spare is a full size tire because I drive a
Truck.
pickup truck, but like it's got the sensor, for like your air pressure. And ever since I put the spare on, like this system that senses is all out of whack. And so I didn't get like the alert that the tire pressure was low. And if I had gotten it earlier or whatever before the damn thing was flat, I probably could have stayed ahead of the situation a little bit. But yeah, it was flat, dude. I literally was like driving on the rim. Like the tire was shredded, like gone. By the time I
Been
was
there,
able
man.
to pull off the safety and like, yeah, and then it was just a fiasco, man. It sucked. And like but there's nothing worse than being on a road trip going somewhere like you were. And I'm assuming just the middle of wherever and having to figure it out on the way, man. That sucks.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we were only an hour into the trip, so I was able to tow the car back at least to Phoenix from where it broke down just south of Flagstaff. But I mean, it was still unfortunate, man. It was a great car. But 2003 Toyota Avalon, but
Nice.
was
wow.
now gone. Yeah,
Rest-
RIP. But
rest in
luckily,
peace.
I'm going via plane to several games later this year, so it doesn't throw off the plans that much. There's a game in week 5 I was planning on going to that was going to be via car, so that one might be up in the air right now. But next 2 weeks I'm gonna be at Arizona State. So
All right. Well, with the way you said via plane, I hope that it's a private plane through NetJets or whatever it is. That's one of the sponsors for College Game Day. The picker of the week. I hope you're going to be a picker of the week coming up here.
That'd be great. Hey, before we move off of before we kind of get to wrapping this thing up, I should have brought this up earlier when we were talking more Pac-12 action. Tyler, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the story that's out there about Oregon State and Washington State filing for a restraining order against the rest of the Pac-12 in an attempt to prevent them, right, from coming to the conference meeting and basically voting to dissolve the conference. And I agree. Like their stance is like, you're leaving, you should have no say-so in the future. Because if they dissolve the conference, then they don't have to pay any of the penalties. All right, that's kind of the way I understand it.
yeah, so this isn't even. I don't think my opinion would be different if I wasn't an Oregon State fan. This is if this is allowed. And the 10 teams that are on their way out the door right now to leave the conference are able to have a say in dissolving the conference. It is going to be one of the most corrupt things we have ever witnessed. In what world does it make sense that when you leave something, you're able to have a say in what happens to it? No. You left. You decided to jump out off the ship and leave. Like you don't get a say in it. I think the restraining order is valid. I believe in the justice system, and I think that Oregon State and Washington State can win it, but I'm worried because all the money's with those other schools. So they might just lawyer up with better lawyers and find a loophole and just get to dissolve the conference, which frankly is petty. And I just think that, liberty is dead if that happens. That's just ridiculous.
Well, there's a lot of money at stake though, right? Because the
you should have thought about that before you left.
Well, I'm saying, but no, I mean, like from the Pac-12 side of it, right? I mean, they would be entitled to a large amount of money that could really put them on some sort of productive path moving forward. I mean, it sounds like the rumor out there is that they're just going to absorb the Mountain West and become the Pac-12 or something like that, which is it's kind of unfortunate that not that I want to see the Pac-12 die, but
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that Oregon State and Washington State didn't get absorbed by one of the power conferences.
Yeah, so ideally what happens from here with, no Power 5 conference picking up Oregon State, Washington State is that they absorb some of the top, not just Mountain West teams, but group of 5 teams. And the incentive to get those teams over would be having all of those Pac-12, all that Pac-12 money, basically, a big bag of money. Hey, we'll pay for your buyout fee, or we'll help you with the buyout fee, or give you a nice chunk of change here. If you could lure San Diego State and Boise State and Fresno State and Wyoming and Air Force, and then you go and get Tulane and Rice, and Memphis is another one. You go poach some of those top teams. I think you could build a decent middle tier conference that would be to the same level of the ACC after Clemson and Florida State leave.
Hey.
No, I'm with you. I agree.
Well, we started the show with college football. We're ending with the death of Liberty. So I think that is a perfect way to just sort of ride off into the sunset. Liberty will die at some point. But everybody who is watching, please don't forget to support Tyler. His TikTok handle is scrolling down there. I'll be sure to put the link tree for you in the show notes because you do some stuff on YouTube and you have a newsletter. So I want anybody who wants to support you to be able to find you. If you want to find us on TikTok, at INC Sports is the handle to do it. Tyler was gracious enough to, or has been gracious enough to, put up with our shenanigans every now and again whenever we tag you in something. So we definitely appreciate that. Twitter, X, whatever, at Iceman and Coach. Facebook, we're on Twitch now. And of course, if you want to listen to us in Apple and Spotify, all those good podcast places, you can. Subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff to everybody, including Budge. And the Matty S Media Network website is back up, mattysmedia.com. Do not forget, if you want to save 15% off your next order for New Era Caps, neweracaps.com/Iceman, and use the code Iceman, and you'll be able to do that. Tyler, thank you, man, for coming on and shooting the shit with us about some college football. I'm very excited about this weekend now.
Absolutely, as am I. Thank you guys for having me. It's always fun to come on here. Love talking about college football, and I love when there's other people to hear me talk about college football. So I appreciate you guys putting up with me as well.
Oh, anytime, man. Like, just consider it an open invitation for any Friday night. I know, obviously, you've got a lot going on with trying to get to some of these games throughout the season, but we'll always be here every Friday if you want to come on and chat. So, no, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for doing this with us. It's been a pleasure. Again, like Matt said, sort of brought some intrigue to some of these matchups this weekend, which is a lot of fun. And had a lot of fun kind of tracking some of the games tonight, right, with our betting interests in mind, which is always a good time. So just looking forward to another great weekend of football, man. This is the best time of year.
It is the best time of year. And Tyler, you'll have to let us know what the new car is named. For everybody else, I hope this finds you well. I hope this finds you safe. We'll see you all next Friday. This is College Kickoff Eve.